Hi everyone. This year it'll be 1 year since I last spoke at the .NET conference. So I wanted to take this moment to reflect back on that event and see what I could take away from the event and possibly even share a few speaking slash presentation tips with you all.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining me today. My name is Clyde D'Souza, and today we'll be taking a look at setting up health checks for an ASP.NET Core application and its dependencies. It's 6 p.m. local time here in New Zealand, and we are streaming the session live as part of the .NET Conference 2020.
Although I was no stranger to public speaking, this was my first time at a major conference, especially for us .NET developers. This was also going to be a live event, so everything had to go smoothly and also in one day. Since the date it was confirmed that I was going to be speaking at this event, I had about a month to prepare. So in this time, I pretty much put together some rough slides based off the abstract that I had submitted when the call for speakers period was open. This gave me a general framework, a rough skeleton structure to work with. Now I had to flesh out each topic a bit more, prioritize my notes, and then only put those points on the slides that were the most important at that stage. The duration for most sessions at that conference was about 30 minutes. So the general guideline that I was working with was about 20 minutes of speaking and presenting and 10 minutes of live Q&A. Of course, this is not set in stone because I also had to account for any time lost due to any technical setup glitches or any time lost due to transitions. When I originally timed and practiced myself, I was actually exceeding the 20-minute mark. So this means that in the unlikely event that something goes wrong, I'd have to rush things, which is no good. So based on this, I dropped one concept from the final presentation, which then brought me back under the 20-minute mark. So the lesson number one is don't overdo it. It's better to cover less and keep it well paced rather than cover too many things but do it hastily. Don't pack too many things in your session, but instead try and keep it down to a couple of things that you'd like to focus on instead. Your audience may be listening to these concepts for the first time, so they may not be able to pick up things at the same speed you are delivering. As a speaker, it's also less stressful to keep your speech well paced and pause regularly. To the listeners, it will sound like you're calm and composed. This strategy also helps reduce the number of filler words that you might use otherwise while speaking. Now that I had refined what I was going to talk about, it was important to organize my presentation in a way that flowed smoothly. My session was a mix of slides and code demos, so I had to make sure that I'm not switching between different applications like Visual Studio, PowerPoint, GitHub, and my browser constantly and hastily. Otherwise, it would have become very confusing for the audience watching this video. And as for the demo, besides praying to the demo gods to make the live demo go smooth, I planned the demo in a way where I could keep the live coding to absolute minimum. Instead, I used Git to store checkpoints of my code, one for each demo, and then all I had to do was just switch between these different checkpoints, these different branches. Each concept was gradually introduced and was building on the previously introduced code. This way, each step demonstrated something new, and yet it was not too unfamiliar. The lesson here is to try and gradually increase the complexity of your demos so that your audience can ease into it. Also, don't switch between different applications unless necessary. And if you do have to do so, take this time to create an auditory pause so that the information can sink in, or explain why you're switching between different applications and do it slowly. Otherwise, your audience might get lost in transition. Now that I knew how I was going to structure my session, I started off my presentation with a slide that basically said what we are going to talk about. And in that slide, I spoke about how I divided my session, what, why, and how, and briefly mentioned the main talking points under each section. Think of this like a high level table of contents page in a book.
This session is divided into three parts. Number one, we'll take a look at why should you consider adding health checks to your application. Number two, we'll take a look at what are the common questions we should be asking ourselves before we jump into the implementation. And number three, we'll take a look at how we might go about adding health checks to our ASP.NET Core application. We'll also quickly take a look at setting up availability tests and also configuring a status page. We'll wrap this session up with a big picture diagram and see how everything fits together.
I find this useful because now the audience knows exactly what to expect from the session and can look forward to it. Towards the end of the video, I also included a high-level architecture diagram showing how all the components fit together. This is important because all the curious members in the audience would already be asking this question. Where is this going to be placed in the grand scheme of things? If it makes sense for your presentation, I definitely highly recommend including a high-level diagram of your topic. Both these steps discussed, number one, setting the expectations of your session, and two, providing a big picture of how everything fits together, allows my viewers to zoom out and see the big picture along with the specifics that I cover in my session. In the 1 month that I had, I practiced almost every day repeatedly. Practice didn't only include what I was speaking, but also included the code that I was demoing and the transitions that I was doing between different applications. This gave me the confidence that even subconsciously I'd know what to say, and even if I forgot the rarest lines, I'd know the gist of it, and that should allow me to buy a few seconds before I get back on track. So, no matter how well you already know a concept, always practice, practice, practice. Towards the end, after I completed the demos, I was going to jump back into the slides for some bonus material. But before I did, I thought let me include a recap slide that would sit in between the demo and the rest of the slide material. A German researcher once showed that repeated exposure to information in spaced intervals provides the most powerful way to learn and recall information. Relative to the duration of this session, recapping what was talked about after an interval should help summarize and cement the concepts we talked about. So, in light of this lesson, which is to try and include a recap at a suitable checkpoint, I'd like to put this into practice right now. Let's do a recap of what we just talked about in this video. Lesson number 1. Don't overdo it. Sometimes less can be more. Lesson number 2. Pay close attention to the flow of your demo and ease your audience into it. Lesson number 3. Try and give your audience the big picture wherever possible. Lesson number 4. Always practice, practice, practice. And lesson number 5. Include a recap at a suitable point. Having said all of this, it is important to remember that not every event will be flawless, but it's important to try speaking at such events and give it your best each time. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you do like this content, please give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you found this video useful, share it with your friends, with your family, with your network. Thanks for watching and see you in another video.